Hello and welcome to the Cynic Weekly on Wednesday. Feels weird saying that. Wednesday, the 1st of October 2025. Joining me tonight I have Stuart Duggan. Stuart, how are you?
Very well, Barry. It's a bit weird to be here on a Wednesday, but I'm sure we'll adjust because we have arrived, and that was really the main adjustment. So, business as usual.
Yes. And we're also joined in person by Scott Fleming. Scott, how are you?
Good, aye. I really don't know what to expect tomorrow, but I think it's going to be really fascinating in lots of different ways.
Very good. Yep, so obviously a large part of the pod tonight will be focusing on tomorrow, but Stu, we'll go straight into our opening question. And given that we've only scored 8 goals in 6 league games this season, and also having lost so many goals due to departures over the last 2 windows, does the lack of firepower worry you? And what can we do to rectify it?
I think obviously yes is the blanket answer to that it is worrying that the team aren't scoring goals. I think it would be more alarming if there was more of a mystery as to why that was the case, but whether it's borne out statistically, if you look at last season versus this, we're talking about just before we came on air, you're talking about, I think we said it was 86 goals last year between 4 players: Daisen Maeda, Adam Ida, Kyogo and Nicholas Kuhn. 3 of those players have left the club and 1 of those players is misfiring. Everything with the club currently feeds back to the botched transfer window and the just general mismanaging the squad, and the reality is that we haven't replaced them. You're talking about not replacing Kyogo since January, and then we haven't replaced Kuhn or Ida, well, certainly not immediately from the window there. So the team's lost a lot of goals and we haven't replaced them. So in that regard, it shouldn't be too alarming that we're not scoring goals. Obviously, though, that's not really acceptable for a team like Celtic. I know we'll talk about it. I thought the Hibs game was better in terms of chance creation. But yeah, it is alarming. What I would say, there's been a lot of talk about it this week, and how it's the notion that like Celtic will never score again, and there have been times watching them when that does feel like the case. But I would say with regards to the league form, certainly, and with some of these goalless draws, we have only seen our new signings bedding into the team in a couple of those games, and we have looked much brighter for it. And it's not acceptable to just say we just need them to bed in because we're in October, and that's not really acceptable, but that is probably the reality. And so in terms of what can we do to rectify it, it might be a wait and see. It might be that some of these players do hit form and start to fill those gaps left by those players, but it's a situation that we're in just now because of the mismanagement of the summer, and that will never not be frustrating, and I think everything will always point back to that until the ship is kind of righted. So you just have to hope that some of those players start to click. And to be fair, they are starting to look more like a Celtic team. And I understand that people say, oh, how low are your standards, that you're just accepting a Celtic team having shots on target and looking like scoring, like instead of actually scoring. I know, but that is where we are. And so I thought that Roger's line last week was devastating about realism when he said we just need to be realistic about where we are. That's devastating, but he's also right. Like, this is the group of players, this is the situation. We can't go and change the window. This is who we have. How can we get the most out of those players? And you're starting to see it, but you have to hope that it might take 1 or 2 of them to kind of catch light to replicate that volume of goals missing from the team.
Yeah, I think that's a real good point, Scott, that Stuart makes there, because it's not our new signings' fault that they came in this late. They're just getting up to speed, and while it is October, it's not great, but we don't really have an alternative, do we?
No, and I wasn't at the game on Saturday, but it's interesting on the agenda and just listening to people who were actually there, the idea that we just seemed to create less and less the longer the game went on, and then the last 10-15 minutes there was no sort of head of steam building up, and Hibs, despite apparently playing really poorly on the day, were able to sort of hold us at arm's length. So it's that sort of catch-22 at the moment of a best case scenario which involves 2 new guys bedding in, one of them Iheanacho, who very clearly is nowhere near fully fit, and Daisen Maeda, who's just possibly the worst possible version we've seen of Dyson Maeda in his time at the club. So that's your best case, and then beyond that, you're looking at a bench and asking James Forrest, who is really starting to look his age, you're asking him to make an impact. You're asking Balikwisha to make an impact. Who's just Christ. You know, we're bringing on Bernardo, who we mostly think of as a holding midfielder nowadays. We're bringing on him to ask him to make some sort of attacking impact on Saturday. So it's really the worst of both worlds. Every time I say that, I think I'm going to do the partridge sort of spinnerism thing. But yeah, that's the sort of scary reality of it at the moment. I spoke on one of my more recent appearances about the idea that there is a lot of parallels between Rodgers' third season this time and his third season the first time, and I looked back at that today, and so we've got 8 goals in 6 league games so far this season. I think we got 6 goals in 6 league games in the first 6 league games that season, and then it did click, and I think we scored 6, 5 and 4 or something like that, and we went on a good little run. So that's my only vain hope at this point, the idea that Brendan Rodgers is a streaky manager and one of those streaks is about to kick in. That's not much hope to be clinging to, really, if it is just, we're going to have a good 2 months and then we're going to be shite again for 2 months. And is that enough to win the league? Quite possibly it is, but it's going to be a lot of draws to sit through. And it's not going to enamour anyone anymore to the idea that Rodgers should still be the manager long term. Yeah,
I think that's a really good point. And just as you were talking there, I was thinking back to that third season the last time, and probably in contrast to what we all expect of him now, he changed it a bit, because I remember Scott Brown was injured, and that's when he first put McGregor into the 6. And we had Rogic and Ryan Christie as the 2 8s, and that gave us a wee bit of impetus, because I think it was the League Cup semi-final at Murrayfield.
Yeah, Christie was a big driving force at that point, wasn't he?
So I think he just sort of came into the team at that point. Because in Cham and who was the midfielder?
Beaton?
He got the really bad injury at Murrayfield. No, his name will come to me.
I've never seen you not know something about Celtic, Barry. This is quite a moment.
Yes. I'll come to me.
The legend of Malumba.
No. we'll get there. Let's make a quiz before we get there. But yeah, Stuart, I feel that the comment that you made there about Rodgers saying about setting their expectations and being realistic, I think, and I was thinking this after Saturday. Ibui, that's him. Ibui Kurasi. He started that game and then he went off injured. But I kind of feel that we have a manager, a large part of the squad, and a lot of the support, probably myself included, who are going through the motions just now. And I know that is not a nice thing to say, given that we are in October, but I feel that we need some sort of catalyst to spark us into life, and maybe that will be tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't know about the necessarily going through the motions. I would say that Celtic post Bayern Munich to the end of the season were very much a team going through the motions, where they just looked like they were not playing with much intensity, to the point where, you know, we ended up with a couple of really diabolical performances and a few diabolical results over that stretch. I think that the team still look a little bit shell-shocked. They're starting to look more like themselves, but Rodgers, I don't think he looks like he's chucked it or that he's not trying. I think he looks deeply frustrated with just probably with his hand that he's been dealt. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's huffing, but I do think he's clearly not particularly happy with how it's going. And, you know, a lot of it is with him, always ego-based, how it will reflect on him, how it will reflect on his team's doing this, his team's doing that. He likes to talk about that. I think that you're right, though, that it might require a catalyst or a spark, and that's been super evident when you saw Sebastian Tenetke come into the team and how quickly everyone just thought, oh my God, this is it. Like, we can strap the team to his back and off we go. And I don't think it's going to be as simple as just one new signing coming in and doing it. I think it would be much better if you had a good team performance where you win 3 or 4-0 against a good side. Mm-hmm. I think that that's possible. Maybe it will be tomorrow night. That would be brilliant, because the sooner it happens, the better. We talked a little bit the other day about maybe some of the mixed responses to the Hibs game, where some people were just still very, very negative about it, whereas generally speaking, I actually thought the first hour or so was as good as we've played this season. And I think that if you take 1 or 2 of those chances and you win that game 2-0, and you've seen a lot of green shoots in terms of creating chances and being more positive, you probably come away and go, right, something's happening here, we're going in the right direction. But there's such an evident drop-off around the 65-minute mark when those substitutions are made that you see the glaring deficiencies in the squad. You see that we've not been able to build up that head of steam in the result, and now we've dropped points, and you can see that happening again and again. So I do think that you need some sort of statement win, perhaps. It would be great if Iheanacho could grab a couple of goals, or just to see Celtic score a couple of goals in a game. I think it would...
Ever again.
That point you said. I think it would just buy them a bit of time to go and just get results and get better and allow things to click, whereas dropping points just now is not great when there is still so much negative energy around the club.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And Scott, if I don't want to kind of jumping ahead here, but just while we're on it, if we were to get I think we need a performance and a result to kind of really get buy-in. Again, it sounds crazy saying that given where we are, but if it was to come tomorrow night, you would hope that, like you said, in Rodgers' final season the last time, we could go on a run then and start to get a wee bit of confidence back. Definitely,
aye. And I mean, we'll touch on it later on, but the more you do your research on them, it really feels like the kind of team we should, certainly don't have any divine right to be going out and sort of smashing them by a good few goals, but it's the sort of team really should be beaten at home. So, yeah, it's just hard to see what the catalyst for that would be, I suppose, because there's no one on the bench who we can sort of pull at a left field. It's something Rodgers was quite good at, and his first spell was just taking a player who you'd almost forgotten about and just throwing him in the team and getting something different out of him that you didn't necessarily think that player was capable of. There isn't really anyone like that knocking about from what I can see, and even if I was, I don't think he'd be inclined to throw them in. He just increasingly gives off this vibe of someone who's frustrated that his arm's tied behind his back, but he doesn't realise he's the one who's tied it there, like with a lot of his decisions. But I almost wonder, we talk about the staff a lot, and you wonder how much they're empowered to actually try anything different.
Yeah.
And whether it is a case of coming up with these ideas all the time and just getting stonewalled. But if we are gonna actually try something which is gonna create some sort of spark, I'm not entirely sure where that's going to come from, but hopefully they are in poor form. We've seen them. I think they're a solid sort of mid-level European side, but we've seen them beaten by Rangers a couple of times. Hopefully they will be quite open. I think they're going to be playing with three at the back, involving a good friend Lagerbieke. So you would really like to think there's going to be space behind that, which the likes of Tenecki and Dyson will be able to exploit. So hopefully it can be that launching pad for us.
Yep, fingers crossed.
Just on staff and things getting done differently, just something that I've noticed in a few games, and maybe this is it's going to derail us completely, and I'm sorry if it does. Have you noticed that we've started taking corners slightly differently?
Oh, the little Negrin.
So it's like a little short. So what would normally be an in-swinger, we take a short corner and make it an out-swinger. Just something to watch.
Do you remember? I remember
Gavin Strachan.
Gavin Strachan.
It was a few
given
years
the license
ago,
to roll.
when we did a pod. It was Gal, myself, and Alan, and I think one of the questions was, like, if you could change one thing about football, what would you be? And mine was to ban out-swinging corners, because why would you purposefully kick the ball away from goal?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something I've always thought.
Fun for the Boffins.
But anyway, it does look great when it does look great when it comes off. The one that always comes to my mind, because I was there that night, was Petrov kind of clipped one and Stan Varga scored in the San Siro, and it was bedlam. But yeah, I don't care for them. Not
to look too far forward, but there was an article on the BBC News today about how Midtjylland are set piece specialists and the rise of set pieces in football.
I saw that.
And how important they are.
These are the kind of articles that open a new tab and never get round to reading.
Well, see, just on that point as well, so see I don't actually know the guy's name, but see the Braga manager.
Yes.
He was Pep's assistant, yeah. And he was very much big into set pieces, so
he'll have a time of his life coming to Celtic Park then.
Yes, I'll be shooting in. Yeah, we kind of touched on it briefly already, but if we kind of look back to Saturday's performance, I think obviously we had the first of the 3 match package of protests. So the first 12 minutes it was silent on the ground, which was a wee bit strange. I know that usually is pretty silent without the two ultras groups singing anyway, but was quite disappointed that when the 12th minute was up and it kicked into action, the sort of chant of all Celtic fans against the board never really took off in the stadium. And does that worry you, Stu, that there might be a bit of apathy already?
I think that's the biggest risk, that you sort of lose that feeling. But there's maybe a bit of apathy in terms of how the movement is going about it. I think that the most pushback that we've seen so far has been regarding the silent. You right, man? Do you want to see why? Barry's wearing the loudest jacket ever. Russell. There's no silent protest when you're around.
Put the flares off.
I think it's the most backlash that you've seen, are people not quite wanting to make that step straight away, because it can be quite disruptive to the performances, especially at a time when the performances have been a little bit flat. I do think, though, what you're seeing on the pitch will constantly be fed back to the lack of quality in the squad, and it's not an issue that's going to go away. I don't think that it's really evident that we're not going to see that. Celtic are pudding now. If we're winning everything, great. No one cares anymore. I think the problems will continue to rumble, and I think that, like all movements, you just have to sort of stay the course with it and see how it goes. I know that Brendan Rodgers was commenting on it again in his presser today. It's something that, as long as it's an escalating movement, will be spoken about in the press and will continue to be made inconvenient and difficult for the powers that be, and it is a good thing ultimately. So it's not going to be 12-minute silence and then suddenly, right, well, here's the head of Michael Nicholson, we're sorry, and also we've got a new chairman and all that. It's just not going to go that way. So you just have to stay the course. They've got the plans for tomorrow, and I'm sure that, I don't know whether or not they're just going to continue escalating with the silence. I would like to think that there's going to be a little bit more sprinkled in to keep them guessing. And we did see that with the Higgins stuff, where
every time it's Bernard Higgins, I want to say Bernard Cribbins.
I know that. I swear to God, I almost said it. I almost whispered it because I thought I'll just let that skate by. You saw that escalate.
The younger listeners will have no idea what that is.
Escalating up to the tennis balls and stuff like that, which seemed to be very effective by the end. So it might
get them back out.
I know it might be that little tennis ball. It must be a bugger to get them printed, though. If you wanted a wee cross out of Michael Nicholson's face in a tennis ball, that's not going to be cheap. But
yeah,
get a whip round, get the buckets outside.
Scott, what's your kind of take on the sort of escalation process? And I suppose it's a start, isn't it? You've got to start somewhere with direct action.
Yeah. Tomorrow's one is going to be especially interesting, because 12-minute silence is one thing, 29 minutes is obviously another.
It's a long time.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of rustling going on.
Get out my jacket.
But yeah, I've already been slightly surprised and disappointed at the amount. I'm basing this purely on social media, so obviously you need to be careful with that. But the amount of pushback we're seeing already, just in comment sections and stuff. You look at the replies to some of the things that the Celtic Collective are putting out, and I do wonder if there's just one of those things, like, not to go too political with it, but like around about the time of the independence referendum, when you really thought you had an idea of where it was going, and then when the results came in, you're like, oh. And this isn't actually the country I thought I was living in, and it's all. I almost wonder if we're going to see a bit of that with the Celtic fan base, sort of writ large. The idea that people are a bit more conservative than we assume. I don't mean conservative with a capital C, but well, in some cases. So yeah, that's. I think there will be more backlash as it goes along. Not necessarily from people who vehemently disagree with what the Celtic Collective are saying and who've even read up on what they're saying in detail. Just people who don't like to see the boat rocked and who just want to go along and sort of I just think that I think there's a lot of sort of complacency and apathy that sets in with the pattern at Celtic over the years of domestic success that's taken for granted, and I do wonder what that does to the fan base as a whole. So I hope that it continues to sort of gather momentum, but it is going to be interesting to see how the backlash unfolds sort of in parallel with that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because I too have been surprised with a lot of the comments, and again I know it's social media and people saying like, right, that's enough, or it's like it's not even got off the ground yet really. So if that's what you think this is enough, oh boy, hopefully get another thing coming. As we've touched on, Scott, the first half performance was actually okay. I thought the midfield, we spoke about the midfield for the last, probably since the start of the season. I thought the introduction of McCowan at least gave us a wee bit of impetus, and he was kind of buzzing around and trying to make things happen, probably more than what we've seen with the Hatate, McGregor and Nygren starting most games.
Yeah, he does do that. He does offer us something slightly different to the other five. And if you are looking for a bit of buzz and a bit of something different in a home league game, I think he generally, especially at home games, he generally does have a decent track record of providing that. That's where it becomes slightly problematic looking at tomorrow night, and you're looking at who can we replace Hatate with. Has McCowan really showed us anything about his ability to deliver at that level? Even if Europa League's obviously quite far off Champions League level, where he wasn't really trusted last season, I'm not so sure. But generally, if you are looking for some sort of little injection of sort of electricity, he can provide it, because he is always trying to make things happen, and he does make runs that the others don't. He'll break into the box a little bit more. But yeah, Saturday, I think it's already been covered in other pods, but I when I came away and I saw the stats and I saw the 3 expected goals and all that, my expectations of this side at this point are so low that I was kind of fine with it. And I probably am guilty of doing that thing of just saying, well, even in our best seasons, we will occasionally get the odd 0-0 draw at home to a team like Hibs or something. If it was a 0-0 against Dundee or whatever, then that's maybe something different. I think you referenced on a pod the other day the 0-0 against St Johnstone, which was horrendous.
It's one of the worst games of football.
I was there that day, yeah, and bearing in mind that was it wasn't even Craig Levein St Johnstone, it was Stephen McLean in his incredibly brief reign, who they were just getting scudded 4-0 every week off all the worst teams in the league, somehow came and drew 0-0, and deservedly so. So at that point, we mentioned that a minute ago, the idea that we're never going to score again. I'm fairly sure at that point I was convinced we were never going to score again. With guys like Palmer and that coming off the bench, and early days of Yang. So yeah, I came away. I'm not going to say I came away from it with positives. It's a 0-0 draw against Hibs, but I didn't come away from it distressed about it. I didn't feel as if it told us anything new that we didn't know already. But the more you read about it and the more you watch back the highlights, I think a lot of the chances, in inverted commas, were like quite hopeful digs from distance, like the McGregor one, the big kind of looping, and an actual one which was straight to the keeper. He actually should have caught it. And then
Bernardo had one from distance as well, but it was kind of straight down the
as well.
Oh yes, they're actually at the bar.
Yeah, I mean it sounds good, doesn't it? We hit the bar twice, but the Sriracha one was sort of a shot come cross, and the actual one he absolutely should be burying it. But yeah, as I say, we have seen worse this season, and I'm sure we will.
Yeah, I think that's true. Like Stu, again, I think Gal mentioned on the agenda on Monday, like me, Gal and Boud reacting to it was a difficult one to react to, and I've often made the point that I find it personally difficult to kind of separate the off-field feelings with what's happening on the pitch. But I think Boud made the point, like it's probably the best we've played, and we've played worse than that and got results, so it's hard to be too down about it. But again, I think looking from the bigger picture, I think this is a pretty poor Celtic team thus far. But that's the nature of when you don't get your business right off the field.
Yeah, I think so long as it is a step along the way to something, then you'll be able to look back with a lot more fondness and see that they were starting to click, and Iheanacho was just starting to find sharpness. And it's a bit of a cliche, but like you would rather see that the team's actually creating chances and not taking them, as opposed to just not creating anything at all, which is where we've been. So if you're talking about how low the standards are, like the Kairat games, just looked like we'd played forever and not even created a goal scoring opportunity, let alone actually scored. And I'm not saying that that's acceptable, but it comes back to this realism of it is where we are. And I think that Iheanacho, I hope, do you know what, his misses reminded me a lot of Kyogo. It reminded me of even like prime Kyogo, where you would watch him and be like, how is he missed that. But then obviously he doesn't get the goal that sort of you forgive the misses for. And his offside goal is very narrowly offside. There was another really well worked move where they flash it across, and I think the keeper just gets a touch that takes it away from him. But he's about a yard and a half offside, and I think that sort of stuff is match sharpness. Yeah. I just thought, again, if you're looking for positives so far this season, and that is looking at your whole sample size of games, we've literally had nobody able to play on the right wing, and I thought that Dyson offered a quite exciting alternative where you could say, right, this might be the best way to get everyone through the next 6 months, or up till January, sorry, not even. So play Maeda out in the right. I know it's not his natural position, but that's a player that you're asking to play all manner of positions that aren't his natural position. So that is as a good a solution instead of seeing Yang, or maybe trying to put the burden on Forrest, who, as you say, has not looked very good this season. He was very poor when he came on. That allows you to sort of give Tenetke space to do his thing, allow Balikwisha to not have the burden of being like a starting player where anything's expected of now, as poor as that is. And I actually thought that the introduction of Johnny Kenny maybe says that Rodgers would rather have a recognised number 9 for the sake of the structure of the team, as opposed to moving Maeda into the middle, who isn't perhaps as natural, or who won't link up the play quite as well. Again, that's quite a damning thing that we've got a very, very average player who's going to fill that role potentially off the bench. Mm-hmm. But that's maybe where we're at. And he keeps making wee jokes and quips about like, oh, that's a problem that I need to solve, and I need to manage that, and I need to manage that situation. And I think that's perhaps indicative of where his head's at, where he's annoyed about the hand he's been dealt. But he does need to find a solution for it. And I suppose that front three that we saw start, it was as good as we've seen so far. Yeah,
I think so too. And other positive, Scott, was I thought Srirachi was exciting. And it's interesting because we all were excited for Tierney to come back, but you could argue that Srirachi's performance on Saturday was kind of exceeded anything that Tierney's given us thus far.
Yeah, definitely. And it just felt like a whole new dimension, really, which we've not had in such a long time. Like, it's such a simple thing, but when he gets down the wing and the cutback for the natural goal that didn't count, like, can't really remember the last time I've seen a Celtic fullback do that. Well, certainly not on the left side.
Probably since Tierney last time he was here.
Yeah. So it's been interesting, the sort of hierarchy of that so far, because I assumed that I had a feeling Srirachi might start in Belgrade, and he didn't. It's almost like he is going to rotate them, but if someone's going to be starting the bigger, more important games, it will be KT. But I would certainly rather pick Srirachi tomorrow, and where that leaves KT as like someone who is a bit of an iconic figure and someone who's presumably came back in quite a big wage, I don't know. That's the interesting part of it, the management of the sort of egos there. We are going to have to give him a certain amount of game time if we're ever going to get to this place over the rainbow where he is actually fit, fully fit, and you can play him whenever you want, really. If that place even exists. But as of right now, if we are going to build them up, I'd rather be build them up in the less important games, probably, because I think Srirachi just offers you a bit more.
Yeah, I think so. And it's interesting he was kind of inverting and also going on the overlap, etc. And just really exciting, I think. Like, I made the point on the reaction, like, he seems to do everything at pace, and sometimes that doesn't come off for certain players, but for him it seems to be working. His delivery's really good, his passing's pretty good, he can go by players as well, so it could be something that I remember when it was kind of floated, like I think Boca actually approached us to see we wanted him, and if he keeps this up, it looks like a solid sort of short-term signing, and then we can maybe look and see what happens after this season. Yeah,
it's sort of like the opposite of Bernabei, where you got a player and then you spend 4 years trying to get rid of them, and then you suddenly do for big money. I just thought he was really buzzy and really exciting, seems to link up quite well with Tenetke, and I think that, generally, I think it's just having a freshness around the team, being able to see, we talked so much about stagnation, and being able to see the likes of, over the last couple of weeks, Kobe Donovan, Tenetke, Iheanacho, these players coming in and having impacts in games. I think that's where you start to see the team just evolve slightly, and that's not something that we've seen for a wee while. So I think if you can have that at the very least, he's offering proper competition for Kieran Tierney, and if Tierney isn't up to it, or if he's injured or whatever, it looks like you've got a very reasonable, if not better, backup. So it's definitely positive. It's one of the positives. Obviously, you'd still like to come away from that without dropping points and have these positives, but it just wasn't the way that it went. So you take that and you move.
Yeah, definitely. We've got some news. So Brendan Rodgers did an interview yesterday with Celtic TV. A lot of what he discussed was the Hibs game and how he was happy with the performance, and it's something that we can build on. He also had singled out Liam Scales for praise. Scotty said, "I think Liam Scales has been playing at a really, really high and consistent level. He's been superb in the team and is someone I can trust. I know what I'm going to get in every single game from him every week." And I think we have, I think the wider support has as well, been fairly critical of Scales, probably with good reason, but it might be that expectation thing again, or where we're at. But I would you'd struggle to find a player who has been better than him for us this season.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. It struck me last week with the draw in Red Star, arguably probably the best game he's ever had for us. I think there could and most probably will be issues as the season goes on in terms of his distribution and giving away ball away in dangerous positions in our own half, but you can't really fault him at the moment. The overall defensive record is really good. It's one of our few saving graces, and you have to give him a lot of the credit for that. And as much as I've just touched on, he does still give a ball away in some really dangerous and stupid positions. He does from time to time. It is sporadic, but from time to time, he does have a really good. He is really good at those little dinked balls in behind, and we've been seeing. And maybe it is because he is for once basking in a bit of warmth from the fans and the media. He is starting to fancy himself a bit, and he's just thinking, I'll start lashing a few more of these around. And it is a weapon for us as a team who are looking a bit stale at the moment and don't have many other players who are willing to take those kind of risks. So yeah, fair play. You can't really criticise him at the moment, as I'm sure many people would like to. But
yeah, that's true. And I think,
sorry, Mick McCarthy, you can. Definitely, people still are, but
I think as well that the defence, as Scott says, Stuart, it has been really solid, and there has been changes. Obviously, Ralston came in. Not sure I agree with that, but I don't particularly think CCV's been that solid looking this season. So it kind of has been Scales who's been your main man in the centre of the defence, and while it's probably a lot of people wouldn't like that, and I would maybe argue that he probably isn't of the level you would hope in an ideal world, but you've got to give him credit where credit's due.
Yeah, I think he has had good games. There are still issues with his distribution. You do still see that week to week, but he has been very consistent defensively this year, which has been good. Carter Vickers, there's just been too many times when I've seen him trip over the ball. It does look like he's just either not paying attention or not as focused as perhaps he once was, which again happens when you're at a club for a long time and
comes that cycle thing, doesn't it?
You've won everything. There's not much more else for you to achieve. You do end up maybe going through the motions.
All your pals have left.
And your other pals in a huff because he's, it's all these things. I do think that, I know that there's lots of folk that aren't that high on him, but we shouldn't forget that he had a very positive pre-season and that Austin Trusty's back training, which is good for him. At the very least, it gives you a rotation option for domestic games. It gives you competition for Scales. We know that CCV's body is just liable to break down if he's playing 2-3 games a week. So having that as an option, I know there's people that will say that's going to limit Dane Murray's opportunities, etc. I think there will be minutes for Murray. And do you know what? When we see a fit and firing Jemai Simpson-Pusey, I think we're really going to go up a level when he comes in. Did you hear what Roger said today about Shin and Amura?
No, I know.
Someone asked him directly in the presser, so they've not been in match day squads. What's all that about? And he was like, "Yep, well, they've been training really well, and just keeping themselves fit. If anything comes up, then they'll be ready to maybe step in." But yeah, there's It's just
that's like one of my answers in this podcast.
People,
just
people
trailing off.
And it was basically like, yeah, they're not playing. But it had to be more polite than that.
At least I never said who.
Yeah. Never met the guy.
I think you touched on it in one of the recent pods, like just how comically tragic that FIFA video was that the club put out, and just how utterly scunnered they looked, just sitting in a little cold little corner of the canteen on their own. Just
Tony Ralston tried to cheer them up. Yeah, I know. Excuse me. The other news, Scott, today was that Sean McArdle has joined Thistle on loan, and I think he came in towards the end of last season, played a few games up at Pittodrie in particular, where he kind of had a hand in one of the goals, and he looked like a kind of cultured left-footed midfielder. And I suppose Thistle is a pretty good loan for him, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I suppose it's a little bit surprising that we've signed a cooperation agreement with Ayr, that he didn't go there instead. But I suppose we've already sent him to central midfielders.
Ewer and
Kyle Bonner as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So this is the third player we've sent to Thistle already, isn't it?
Yep.
So yeah, maybe slightly unusual that we sent more players there than we have to Ayr after signing the cooperation agreement. But it is a side who are presumably going to do quite well and be in contention for promotion, presumably going to play decent-ish football along the kind of style that we would play. So, yeah, you just hope he would get opportunities. Already, basing this purely on the one or two Partick Thistle accounts that I follow on Twitter, but they all seem to be really quite hot on McPherson. I'm not sure how Clark's been doing, but if he can get a bit of game time and do well, then I'm sure he's got a great chance to come back and play more for the B team.
Yeah. Stu, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think similar to yourself, I've got one or two pals that support Thistle, and I saw them. They were quite high on Mark Wilson. I don't know if the results have changed or if something's happened lately, but
Hampton Fairmont at the weekend,
didn't they? So
yeah,
it might well be that Wilson is going to start becoming an exciting young manager, and maybe it is quite a good fit for managing those players. Obviously, he's got a Celtic connection as well, so it's probably an easy deal to do. I think you just want to see him playing, and we're obviously endlessly critical about the B team setup and how useless it is, so he'll be getting a higher standard of football week in, week out, and yeah, you would presume that they'll be competing, even if it's not necessarily automatic promotion. It'll be up there for playoff places and stuff like that. And I saw today as well that I can never pronounce his name, is it Isuzuku?
Yeah, he signed a new deal.
He signed a new deal, which again, it's positive at a time in which anytime I see a B team score come up, he's invariably scored or been involved in some way, captains the team. At a point at which Kobe Donovan is broken into the first team, albeit by circumstance, you do start to look at who could be the next ones through, next ones up, and it's been quite barren for quite a long time, and we have had a lot of players at that time, at that level, going and signing contracts elsewhere. So perhaps that's positive that there are #pathways being formed. And to be fair, we talked about that for so long, and then they put, it was O'Day initially. I don't know who it is that's doing it now. Oh, it's Maloney now, isn't it?
He's the next manager.
The next Celtic manager. So yeah, maybe you're starting to see some planning going on there. Maybe this is what it's all about, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's kind of close by, I imagine you wouldn't have to up and move from where he lives, and can keep a close eye on him. And obviously there is that Celtic connection with some players being there, and Mark Wilson, the manager, Tony Watt playing for him, etc. as well. So it's one to keep an eye on. Scott, there's also been talk today that Everton are weighing up a move or a January swoop. Having the word weighing up and swoop excited me when I put that in the rundown. But I think it is just a matter of time before Dyson goes. You can see, I think, there's been that sort of conversations that he's not the type of player to down tools, but I think it's human nature that if you had your heart set on moving and it didn't happen, you are going to see a sort of drop in form, and it kind of feels that we are kind of watching his final few months as a Celtic player.
Yeah, I certainly felt as if, and again, I've spoken about this before, the idea that we almost just take his good nature for granted sometimes, and he is human. So I certainly felt initially window shuts, it'll take a couple of weeks, but he'll go back to being one of our most important players, probably maybe even our most impactful player the way he was last season. And if that is coming, then the more we watch him at the moment, the more it feels quite far down the road. Would be quite ironic if he suddenly just looked shit hot again in December and then he goes on the 1st of January.
Do you think Everton would be a good move for him?
Possibly. I was thinking about this earlier today. I mean, they've got two quite poor strikers, don't they? So he would quite possibly end up doing the same thing he's done here, have been brought in as a winger and then they have to play him up front. But they seem to be trying to be a bit more expansive this season, playing with a lot of width with Grealish and who's on the other side, and Dye.
Yeah.
So maybe would
Hall as well.
Yeah, maybe it would be. Yeah, he's a good player. So maybe it would be a good sort of rotation option. It's a better move for him than the clubs he get linked with beforehand, like Wolves and Brentford, probably because they both are probably going down. So yeah, it does feel inevitable at this point, and it is just a case of maximising the amount of money you can get for him. At the same time, it's terrifying to think what state we would be left in at that point and what our backup plan would be. I think you would need to go out and get at least 2 players, really.
I think so. And Stu, you mentioned right at the top of the show that if Dyson was to go, that would be all of those 86 goals had gone in the space of 2 windows, which or 3 windows have been called Kyogo. But yeah, I agree. I thought on Saturday was a wee bit more like his old self. I thought that the chance we mentioned about Iheanacho hitting the bar, I thought he did really well to get that ball over quickly. But if it is a suitable amount, you'd imagine it would be kind of both parties would be happy to part ways.
Yep, I think so. Firstly, at the weekend, I thought his application and his effort was brilliant compared to what we'd seen in the midweek. So hopefully that's not something we need to be concerned about. Not that it's particularly important to me where certain Celtic players go, but one of the things that was on my mind in the aftermath of that is that whatever this deal was that was on the table, some people had said it was Brentford or down south or
so someone said Germany as well.
A Bundesliga
team,
that
was
Frankfurt
vague.
was another one. You worry that because it's not happened then, he's going to get either a Shannon deal for himself or for the club where we get less money and he ends up somewhere that he shouldn't be. Kind of, I suppose if you, what were, Kyogo eventually moves in January. What were his options in the summer? There was that Man City link, etc. Was that a move that was ever real? Was that actually on the table, but we were in such a state that we couldn't do it? So if it's going to be a club like Everton, I think that would be a good move for him. One of the kind of wider concerns I have about the fan movement, etc., and just the situation with the board is that I think we're so bad at board level in managing anything that as they crisis manage the PR and everything around the protests, there is not even the slightest hint of planning going on for the January window. And ultimately, the best way to undo a lot of the problems that we have is for Celtic to limp on until January and almost treat it like day one is your last week of that window. And you might have to pay over the odds, but you fucked it so badly that is the sort of iron price that you pay. And you need to go and sign a first choice striker, and you need to go and sign a first choice right winger. You probably need to let Dyson Maeda leave, and it all has to happen kind of the way that the first Postecoglou season, when it's like, guess what, bang, there's your 3 players, that's it, done.
Before the window's even open.
There's not going to be the break. They might have games that they want to manage. I think the Rangers games, I think it's post New Year, I think it's maybe the 3rd.
Yeah,
I think so, yeah.
It might be like, give us that, then you can go. It can't be give us these last 2 Europa League games that we need to get this, just get them gone and get these players in and get them up to speed so that when it comes to that first knockout game, whether that's a playoff, hopefully they've got a few extra weeks and it's the round of 16, I think you go straight to. If you finish top 8, the players who have come in, whatever that price is, I don't care what they've got to pay, come in, they can hit the ground running, have that few weeks to kind of bed in and then go for your really important games, which we didn't do in the summer. And to be honest, more than anything, I think that would be an indication to the Celtic support that we're going to start behaving like a proper club, because that's how you have to put it right.
Yep. See if we hear that Rodgers say that line in a press conference at any point in chat. It's a difficult window. See if we hear that once.
Yeah, it's the sort of Celtic transfer window bingo. Just kind of last couple of bits of news. Lustig was in the media this week and he was talking about Brendan Rodgers. He said, "I only regret the way that he left when he did. It when you say you're a Celtic fan, you do not quit the club in February. Yes. I do not approve of his choice, and he knows it. He then went on to say about how he's the best manager I've ever worked for. But quite interesting to hear that, and I think, Scott, one thing that is very clear is that Michael Lustig really does love Celtic. Even now.
Yeah, it is always nice to get that impression, particularly with foreign players, that they are still keeping tabs on it, they do still care, and he definitely seems to be in that bracket. And I do quite like that it was infamously Rodgers just seemed to leave so abruptly, didn't he? That I think the line at the time was that he hadn't even spoken to any of the players.
That's right.
So I just like the idea of him driving down to Leicester or something. He just gets a wee notification on his phone and it's just listed calling him a prick. But all the stuff about best manager I've ever worked with, tactically and stuff, it's just kind of ironic reading that, isn't it, when we look at the team at the moment, because we know that Rodgers does or did have the capacity to be this transformative, brilliant tactician, and certainly in his first era at the club, I feel like we saw that quite a lot, and yeah, we're obviously just, not to retread what we were talking about earlier on, but we're just not seeing that at the moment. We're just not even seeing a willingness to try things. It is just that sort of assumption that if you keep going with roughly the same players and lineup, it will just click. And yeah, I'd be interested. I suppose what I'm saying is, I'd be interested to see what the players who are in the dressing room now have got to say about this in a couple of years' time. Yeah, I think
that's a good point. But also to kind of maybe counter that, Stuart, I thought there was times last season where some of the football we played was exceptional. So you could argue he has been hamstrung with the quality of player, but as Scott says, one thing that he hasn't really done, even including last season, he was sort of famous for his in-game management the first time around. I remember there was a game at Tynecastle where I think he brought Rogic on, and Rogic just kind of opened up the game for him, because it wasn't working with the midfield that we had. So you could argue he doesn't have the options to do that, but he does kind of seem set in his ways now, and maybe he has just got older and things have changed.
Yeah, I don't think it's something that we've seen in his second spell at all, that sort of in-game management. And we talked about it a little bit, that some of the shine is kind of, or some of that kind of cloak of invincibility that he has kind of worn off a little bit. But similar to, this is why stats are nonsense, Barry. You know, you can cherry pick stats to make whatever argument you want. You know, for people that are worried about, you know, Celtic have had X amount of 0-0 draws or goals, there has been a statistical precedence in the previous manager in his previous time when it was worse than that and we still went on and won X, Y and Z. The same manager that we're saying is devoid of ideas and has chucked it, gave us some of the best football that we've seen in the last few years, as recently as like 9 months ago. The main change that we've seen has been the management of the squad and the playing staff. That's not to absolve him of blame, but it is also, these two things are the realities. So I think he probably could be doing more. I think he's trying to figure out solutions to these problems. I think that if you'd continually seen him just go Yang or Forrest or whatever on the right, or playing Balaquisha outright when he's clearly not adept at doing that, you could probably posit that he's chucked it and that he doesn't care and that he's just naming a team. He is, in his defence, which I know that's not a popular position to be in, I think he is trying to find that. There just hasn't really been any let's try and play like a double pivot or whatever, because I do think that he believes that system is built to work, because we saw it work recently, and I don't think it's so found out that system would not work if you had those players, for example, right now.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, there was the Henrik Larsson merch launched this. Some smashing items on there. A Henrik Larsson water bottle, a coin, cufflinks. Get your Christmas orders in now.
It's a shame that we're not filming this one, because I am head to toe in
the game. I love that. The lure tracksuit.
Filled it, flask it.
Yeah.
See if we don't get this situation resolved with the board, I really worry for the Christmas video this year.
Oh God,
it's not going to be good at all, is it?
That's a good point, actually. But yeah, I think read the room is the sort of well-trodden phrase this week for that. We've touched on it briefly before, but obviously Scott, tomorrow is the match day 2 in the Europa League, an early kick-off at Celtic Park, which I think probably will affect the attendance. Obviously, there will be people who have not taken up their tickets, myself included. But do you think the early-ish kick-off will have an effect on the attendance as well?
Yeah, I think so. There is always that slight coming to terms with it, isn't there, after you've lost in the Champions League qualifiers and you're looking at the Europa League. And to be fair, as Europa League draws go, I think we got an okay one. It does have some quite appealing fixtures this year, but at the same time, Braga, one of those, the kick-off time definitely doesn't help. But Braga are also one of those teams who, as I said earlier, a perfectly solid sort of mid-level team. But if I asked you to name any of the players or any of the players from the last few years or any of the managers, they are just one of those teams who constantly seem to be selling and rebuilding. Mm-hmm. And again, I feel like I've done this with so many clubs recently, like Club Brugge in particular. I'm just kind of like enviously looking at their business model and the amount I think they spent about 25 million in the summer, most of it on 2 players, and they made about 50 million in sales, and they make roughly 40-50 million in sales every year. So it's another club to be slightly envious of in that regard, but they don't have that same sort of level of excitement that maybe a Sporting Lisbon or a Porto or something like that would bring. So I do find it interesting just how many times, I feel like it's been at least once a day, maybe more than once a day this week, the club are still saying tickets available. Tickets available. I mean, you click on a link, which I do just out of a sort of morbid sense of interest every time. You just see that, like, I think every section, like they're dotted around, but every section has still got plenty of tickets left. So I think there's going to be a big focus on it tomorrow, and the crowd shots will be interesting.
I think that there's probably an assumption that if you see 50,000 people at Celtic Park tomorrow, that somehow the fan movement has like failed because, you know, you not taking your ticket, who cares, somebody else is coming taking it anyway. I think
that's
that
not my feelings.
I know, I'm sorry. You know, the difference between selling out your Champions League packages in minutes or whatever, where you can charge whatever you want, and then having to pretty much get the begging bowl out up until kick-off to punt £45 tickets, tells its own story that something's changed. And it's not, I hated this today. You can tell that I've listened to the press conference right before coming here. Kennedy Nibsan asked a question that was very much sowing the narrative of like Celtic fans being entitled, where he said, you know, Celtic fans are staying away because they're not interested in the Europa League. I think Celtic fans would be plenty interested in the Europa League if we hadn't had such a clusterfuck with Kairat and with the window, and if it wasn't they're two very, very separate things. If Celtic played Bruges, for example, in the playoff, and it was a really good game and we went out on penalties, you go, fuck, this is just hard. This is the coefficient. This is where we're at. We did our business though, and it just wasn't quite ready. Maybe you look at the manager more, or you look at individual players. I think that there would be an appetite to be interested and excited about the Europa League. I think there probably is still, albeit it's being used as a bit of a tool just now for these protests. And I think it was really unhelpful to ask the question that way. But I'm not going to go any further with Kennedy.
A lot of the questions seem to be like very leading questions, basically saying the atmosphere is going to be shite tomorrow, and that's going to make it much harder for you to get a result. That's what the direction a lot of the questions seem to be heading in, from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, and it's just missing the point completely, isn't it? I believe there's 400 Braga fans coming.
Scabs.
Yes. And obviously, as we mentioned, Braga beat Feyenoord in the first match. Looking at our lineup, I think a lot of us, Stuart, were disappointed that Donovan came out, but I think when you watched Rodgers' press conference ahead of the Hibs game, he kind of hinted at it that he wanted to kind of protect him because he'd played 3 games in a row and 2 games for the Scotland under-21s. I know on the agenda there was the kind of conversation Ralston might continue, but I think that given Donovan's performance in Belgrade and how he's performed so far, I think he would come back in. Will we kind of build the team between us? So do you want to go for the back 4?
Well, on Donovan, I felt the same. I thought, firstly, and Gal, you were one of the biggest for it, I thought too much was made of Donovan coming out of the team at the weekend, but that's with the proviso that he comes back in tomorrow. And I thought No, mate, you don't need to show me quotes from the press conference. I was listening. I was there, man. The concerning thing is he gets asked about Kobe Donovan and he says he will be available to be a part of the squad. And you're like, fuck, he's actually going to play Ralston. I can understand why the notion of, I can understand the argument. He's only played 3 games. Why do you need to rest him? Well, he's played 5 games because you do have to factor those Scotland games in, and that's 5 games at a higher level than he'll have ever played at before in about a 3.5 week period. And it might not be a physical toll. He's a fit young lad. He clearly has no issue getting about for 90 minutes. Big physical boy. But it might just be like, fuck, my head's fried, man. This is too much. It's too much pressure. And maybe that is why you just go, right, we'll take him out. Or maybe you also say, Anthony Ralston needs to play some football because if anything happens to you, we can't have him coming in blowing out his arse if he's not played anything. So I think it's a smart enough thing, but I would really hope that Donovan has done enough to get straight back in the team. And the quotes from the presser are concerning that he's maybe not going to do that. And I think it's really a really easy win for him just now at a point where fans are quite frustrated generally that it would, and he's found this, I think, it might have been Cy Ferry or someone was saying that they'd been involved or they'd seen the B team and Donovan was not a standout by any stretch. Yeah. But when an opportunity has come his way, you actually see that you've got this diamond in the rough, which does also point out that there might be a lot more of that going on in the B team if we don't know about, but you don't know about them. I think it's an easy win. He talked about last year. He was like, it's my life's mission to bring through Celtic players in, or whatever the fuck he's saying, and he's finally got one here. So to punt him straight back would not be wise. Just on that, so the comments that Rodgers did say, so Stuart said he will be available for the squad. Yeah, I thought he was outstanding last weekend. He's been a real bright spark since coming up, and I've really liked Kobe since I came, just his personality, what it takes and what it needs to play for Celtic from a mentality perspective. He's shown real good signs early on, so yeah, you have to manage young players like that. He played a couple of games with Scotland and he's played games back to back with the first team, so you have to be mindful and manage that. But I've been so pleased for him, and it's great that he's available for the squad. He said it twice. Yeah.
Just imagine him doing a dramatic pause as well.
He kind of does for the squad.
But if it was up to you, Scott, would he come straight back in tomorrow?
Oh, 100%, yeah, absolutely. I do think when Ralston came back in at the weekend, it was almost just like, right, if I'm going to play him at any time soon, this is the obvious game to do it, and it's just sort of a little nod to Ralston of just like, I've not written you off here, but I think he does. I think Donovan does have to come in, and still no Hatate, is there?
Says he trained.
He's trained, alright, okay.
Right.
He's also been absolutely shite, so that's maybe the bigger issue.
Yeah, I suppose midfield will be interesting tomorrow. I would assume Negrin comes back in, but if Negrin comes in and Hatate doesn't start, is he going to play McCowan? Or?
Yeah, because I don't think English was particularly good at the weekend.
No, and he doesn't seem to want to play him on the left side either.
So we could have an issue there, yeah.
I wonder if he does. So see how you were talking about Ryan Christie. I know I've made that comparison with Luke McCowan before. Maybe he just has to give him a chance, and maybe it's like 60 minutes against Braga, and if it's not happening, then because it's not like you're throwing him in against Real Madrid, where he's going to probably drown in that sort of pressure. He's not even really played international football. But man, see how we talked about the drop off.
I was thinking I looked me drown.
We're talking about the drop off in the team at like the 70-minute mark. See the difference between that midfield three. I know Engels didn't play very well, but it was quite quick and quite dynamic and quite 1 and 2 touch. Benjamin Negrin taking 6 and 7 touches of the ball every time it got to him. I thought I was gonna murder someone.
Yeah, but it's interesting because I thought as the game went on last Wednesday, that he was really good at sort of that more advanced role, and I think it is just going to be just kind of trying to coach that out of him. Like, he has to release the ball quickly and his decision making has to be better. So will we go? So the defence, we think Donovan, Carter Vickers, Scales and KT probably.
Yeah,
As we said earlier, I would like Xerachi, but if I had to bet on it, I would expect KT.
Yeah, probably. And then the midfield, we don't really know if Hatate is fit. I'd imagine he'd come back in, but I tend to agree with you. I think a home game against this, as Scott says, a sort of mid-level European team, it's kind of now or never for McCowan.
Yeah, I think he might stick with the same midfield. 3 from the weekend because we did look better when they were on. I think he might go Engels and he might go McCowan.
Interesting.
Controversial. It depends on how fit Hatate is.
Yeah.
You know, it was just a knock, wasn't it?
Yeah, ankle knock, I think. And then the front 3, I think, kind of picks itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Predictions, Scott?
I think 2-1 us.
2-1 us, okay.
Yeah, I think that's probably about fair. I'll say 2-0 just in the interest of being slightly different. I think that I do think it's very important that you win this game. I think if you don't win this game, then it does reframe the level that we're at and also our ambitions for this tournament. I think that the draw has been reasonably kind and that this is a game, obviously if there was like a full Celtic Park and everyone was pulling in the right direction, that you would expect that we go. I always look at them in the perspective of if you got them in the Champions League, you'd be like 3 points, that's a banker. We need that to be a banker, so that's how it should be at this level as well.
Yeah, definitely. Right, we're going to finish off. I kind of feel like the quiz has been on strike and protesting this season, but we're back with a bang, baby. And Stu kind of got the idea that the lineup quiz does go back to the last time we faced Braga, and I've gone for the home game, which was the 4th of August 2010. Celtic won 2-1. We did then.
Who were the scorers?
We did then lose 3-0 over there. So the lineup quiz for anyone who isn't familiar is that both Scott and Stuart will be able to have 2 lives, and they have to name a player who was either in the starting lineup or on the bench, even if they didn't come on. So, Scott, I'll let you go first.
I've just thought of quite an obscure one, but I'm going to be a wank and do like a kind of pointless answer thing and just try and keep it back, keep it in my pocket, and just say like Hooper.
Hooper, correct. Stu?
James Forrest.
Oh.
Come on, these are your bankers.
He wasn't.
Well, that's fine. The game will be over pretty early. That's fine for me. Yep. See if I care.
Back to Scott.
Mulgrew.
No.
Jeez,
oh no, he was. Sorry. Can't even read my own. Mulgrew was. So you're right. Stu.
Commons
is
game's over, isn't it?
No.
Jesus, man.
No. That was the.
Great.
He never signed until like the January.
Yeah. Oh fuck.
Remember he scored in his Hampden debut.
Yeah, he's a quintessential Lennon one era player, so that feels harsh.
You've won, Scott.
Well done.
Well done, Scott.
Let's get your pointless answer then.
I was going to say Ephraim Juarez.
Yes, he scored.
I thought he scored. I was going to say I remembered him scoring, and I thought
I can remember the goal actually.
Is it Utrecht he scored against or Braga?
He scored against them both.
Oh fucking hell!
Yeah.
There you go.
So the team was Zawiska in goals. Then we had Juarez, Hoyveld, Big Josh.
Yeah.
Chaduri, Mulgrew, Lubens, Brown, Ledley, Samaras, Maloney, Hooper, and on the bench we had Gal's favourite Dominic Cherry, Ronya, Ki Sung Young, McCourt, Fortuny, Rasmussen, and Murphy.
Rasmussen, fucking hell!
Some absolutely stinking footballers in there.
Yeah, but there's still some you would take over what we had. So the more things change, the more they stay the same. Well, that'll leave us, or that'll do us, for tonight. Hopefully that we can get off the mark tomorrow night and we can start to look a wee bit more like our old selves. But Scott, thank you for joining us in person. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure to grace Cynic Towers for the first time.
Lovely debut in person. And Stuart, big week for yourself, but you're looking smashing.
Yes, trying to fit into my dress for Saturday.
Yes.
When I will be having a big party.
Okay.
Getting married. That's
I didn't know if I was allowed to.
Yes, no, it's fine.
Nice.
Yeah,
danced around.
We've already broken the hearts barriers. They're too late. We're here. So yes.
Maybe a last minute pitch from someone. I was going to say it might be like Ian Hatch. You're leaving Sunday morning.
Deadline day.
But no. Best of luck.
Thank you.
And best of luck for the Celtic tomorrow as well. So this has been the Cynic Weekly. I've been your host Barry Gallagher with Stuart Dugan and Scott Fleming, and I'll speak to you down the road.